Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's the time once again. Let's talk metal. All right, so recording this here at the end of June. No, scratch that. End of July. Summer is moving along pretty fast. So, yep, we'll soon be in August. And in terms of picking stuff up, it's been a pretty slow month, and that's okay. I was actually hoping it would be kind of a slow month. I picked up a bunch of stuff at a record show in late June. Made a video, showed some records, we had some laughs. You've seen that. And, even though I didn't spend, a ridiculous amount of money at the record show, I wanted to kind of, rein things in for July. I've got plenty of stuff to listen to, newer stuff that has not gotten played very much, and also a bunch of older stuff I haven't revisited for a while. There were also a bunch of new albums coming out here at the end of July that I wanted to potentially review for Heavy Metallurgy. So I've been spending a lot of time listening to that kind of stuff and revisiting some old classics I haven't played in several years. I also have a couple of deep dives that I've got to prep for that Heavy Metallurgy will be doing eh, probably late September. We were thinking it might be sometime in August, but I'm thinking it's going to get pushed into September now. But those two bands, catalogs, I think it's 29 albums between the two bands. So I've been trying to get a little bit of a head start on that homework too. So bottom line, I was pretty happy not to purchase a lot of stuff during July. And I did find, a few little things here and there, but it's been, just kind of a little bit of a trickle. Got one used CD at a record store here, ordered one $5 CD there, ordered one used $7 CD there. Just, very, very cheap stuff that looked interesting and the price was right, but very minimal. And of course, with all the big albums getting dropped on July 26th, which was a couple of days ago, it was time to go out to the local record stores and see if they had any of them. Short answer, they didn't. So I have not picked up any of the literally flock of interesting new releases that have just come out. But apparently, a lot of people decided that July was the time to take some nice vintage vinyl to a couple of the local record stores and sell it to them. So when I went in looking to maybe pick up one or two new CDs, I ended up with a few old vintage vinyl albums instead. Fun to find the stuff. They weren't giving it away, so it wasn't cheap, but there were some nice items that was kind of cool to stumble into. So we will take a look and see what I've managed to pick up here. All right. So first store I went to, both of these are in Greenville, South Carolina, kind of up here in the corner of the state. And the first one I went to is called Cabin Floor Records. They've been around for several years. They've changed locations a couple of times. So if you haven't been there in a long time, you do want to double check and make sure you know where they're located. I think the last move was maybe 1.5, 2 years ago. Anyway, the store is almost nothing but vinyl. They have a few cassettes. I don't think they have a CD in the place. Guy that runs it is very nice. He always has, a few boxes of punk and metal stuff. A lot of it is, newer reissues, but he also gets some new releases from labels like Dark Descent, 20 bucks spin, and he will, occasionally get some vintage stuff. So, the current location's in a part of town, and when I'm over in Greenville, I don't get into that area of Greenville a whole lot. And he's also not open on Sunday, so if I'm there on the weekend, I've kind of got to be there on a Saturday and in that little corner of town. But when I am, I try to stop by. Went by on July 26th, and like I said, no new releases had popped up, but he did have this in the stack, which caught my eye. It's the debut album by a band called Dead Engine. It's DED, misspelled in classic 80s fashion. This has to be an 80s band. And yeah, they released this in 1985. It's on Pentagram Records. So get look at the band here. Pretty typical 80s looking thing. Yeah, it's got the Dutch East India import and the pentagram label on it. Uh, I don't know a ton about Dead Engine. They were a Michigan band. They made a 7-inch single that came out in '84, and And the single, I have it. It was a little bit of a pain to track down. I used to see it on eBay constantly for like, $20 or less. And it was one of those things I just kind of put off buying and put off buying. And then when I finally was, trying to get a copy of it maybe 10 years ago or so, of course they had all dried up and it wasn't anywhere. I eventually found it for a reasonable price, but it took a lot longer than it felt like it should have. But I like the single. Both tracks are pretty good. They're pretty straightforward, no frills. They're classic, traditional 80s heavy metal. And I knew they made a couple of albums, but I never have heard either of them. This is the first of the two albums, and it even had the insert with it inside with lyrics on the back. And so I decided, yeah, I haven't picked up much this month. This looks interesting. It was a fair price. So I went ahead and picked that one up. The second LP by the band, if I remember right, it has a red cover and like pictures of the band on the front. I think it came out a few years later, more like around 1988. Whereas I think I already said this one was from 85 and the single was from 84. Have not had a chance to play it yet, but looking forward to checking out what it's like. If it's anything like the single, it'll be enjoyable. They're not reinventing the wheel. They weren't going to, conquer the throne of Iron Maiden or anything. But yeah, so potential for a good little record there. All right. So found a record, was happy, but wanted to hit one more store on my way home. So also stopped over by Pharmacy Records. The guys that run that, both are into a lot of underground music, a lot of metal. Nice guys. Always chat with them whenever I swing by. And turns out that, yeah, a couple of different people had brought in some really nice vinyl from collections to sell as well. So when I went in, I know to always kind of scan over the wall, see if anything new was up there. And yeah, you might say a few things caught my eye pretty fast this time. And so yeah, this got a little painful for the wallet, but you don't find this kind of stuff in person in the wild very often. So when you see it, you kind of got to make a decision. Are you going to walk away, leave it? You know it won't be there the next time you go by. Or are you going to bite the bullet and spend a little more money than you thought you might? Well, I didn't buy everything that caught my eye. I guess we'll say the one that got away first. They had a copy of the Assassin album, and I'm blanking on the name. It's the one on Steamhammer, has a big tank on the cover, kind of a yellow-orange color scheme. Marty's talked about it over on Heavy Metallurgy from time to time. Um, Decent album from what I remember. I haven't heard it in ages. And, I saw the very distinctive cover, but I was like, ooh, that's promising. I did not end up picking that one up. It had some pretty noticeable wear on the cover, cut corner, which was noticeable. I could have probably lived with that if the price was right, but it also had a lot of ring wear on the bottom front cover and on the bottom back cover. And by the time you add all that up, it's like, yeah, that cut is noticeable, the wear is noticeable. The price, no, I don't think in that condition, I decided just I'm going to pass on it. I'm not a total mint freak or anything like that, but sometimes you just gotta say, nah, this just isn't the copy for me. So I left that one there. But there were three I did not leave there. And the first one, I think folks will recognize this cover pretty quickly. Yeah, they had a copy of a Hellhammer Apocalyptic Raids EP. This is the Metal Blade pressing. So down here, it's Metal Blade 1028, I believe. Or is it 1128? 1028, yep. 1028 for the catalog number. So it means this will be, silver vinyl or silver label with the Axe logo, of course. Uh, and yeah, the only official thing that Hellhammer released when they were a going thing back in the day. You get four classic tracks. And the funny thing with this one is, of course, the two tracks on one side are both very short. You've got the third of the storms evoked damnation and Massacra never did know why they called it massacre instead of massacre. I mean, you look at the lyrics and they clearly mean massacre. So why is it called massacre? Hmm, weird little things that I guess only Tom Warrior knows. But then the flip side, the two tracks are a good bit longer, with Triumph of Death being the really slow, kind of gnarly one, and Horus Aggressor, which has always been my favorite of the four tracks. I always kind of wondered why they didn't pair them up differently and have like one of the longer 5 minute tracks plus one of the 2 minute tracks like on each side to make it balance out a little bit more. I don't know. I don't think they thought about these things very much back in the day when these were released. But nevertheless, how many times do you walk in a record store and have a Hellhammer sitting there staring at you? Cover is in pretty good shape. It's, got some dings and creases along the edges, a little bit of ring wear, but actually pretty nice cover condition. The vinyl is very clean. I have played this one already, plays absolutely perfectly, no pops thrown in or anything. And it did have the one-sided insert with it as well. So kind of cool. I think some copies of this also came with a metal blade merchandise insert, but not all copies came with it. This one does not have a merch insert with it, which, that's okay. I can live without it. So yeah, a very cool one to stumble into. Just for comparison's sake, I did already have one copy of this on a different pressing. This is an early, oh, excuse me, an early pressing on Noise. So of course Noise released it, but then licensed it to Metal Blade's release. And there is the Noise label on the vinyl. Um, the Noise pressings are a little weird. There's several of them for Apocalyptic Raids. If you're not familiar with them, you got to look at them kind of carefully to figure out which version you are getting, because there's at least four pressings on Noise. Then there's the Metal Blade pressing. There's also a Bonsai pressing. I do not have the Bonsai. The first pressing on Noise looks a lot like the Metal Blade, what I just showed, where the name and titles and stuff are a lot more red in color. So that one's very distinctive. The second and third pressings on Noise, the label or the name and the print, and even like the print on the back of it, is a lot more of a pink color. The difference is that the second pressing is dark pink and the third pressing is light pink. And it may sound like it's easy to tell apart, but when you're looking at the pictures on Discogs and like comparing to a copy, it really isn't always that easy to see. It's like, is this one dark or light? When I look at it, to me, it looks kind of light. So I'm thinking this is probably the third pressing. But when I compare it to the pictures of the second and third pressings on Discogs, it kind of looks like it's in between the two. So which is it? I'm not really 100% sure. This copy I bought from King Fowley probably like 20 or so years ago, probably over 20 years ago at this point. And when he was selling off a big chunk of a vinyl collection, and he made it very clear up front that yeah, it was not the first pressing. I knew that when I bought it. Yeah, the Noise pressing uh, also opens at the top and has kind of the very thin cardboard cover, typical of 12-inch singles and EPs pressed in Europe. There's as I mentioned, a fourth pressing on Neat. It's easy to tell apart because it's the only one of the four that has the silver Noise labels instead of the black Noise labels. And on the fourth pressing, the cover opens on the side instead of on the top. So the first pressing is easy to spot because it's going to be red for the band name. The fourth pressing is easy to spot because it's the only one that opens on the side and has silver labels. The second and third pressings are the ones that are kind of a pain to tell apart. This one, I believe, also came with insert. My copy doesn't have the insert for the Noise pressing, but again, knew that when I bought it from King. So, yeah, kind of neat to add the Metal Blade pressing to the shelf to sit here with the Noise pressing. And, I know what you're thinking because I had to think the same thing too when I was standing there in the store. It's just like, do I really need the metal blade version? I do have this already. Do I need to spend more to get the metal blade version or not? One little voice says, nah, you can leave it, save your money for a rainy day, and just take a pass. But the sick little monkey sitting on this shoulder says, but it's an old metal blade pressing, and you love old metal blade pressings. And how often are you going to walk into a store and see it? We see which one won. You go away. Sick little monkey, you cost me money again. It's the way it goes sometimes. So yeah, very cool one to find. Um, let's see. Next one that I picked up from them. Another kind of classic from around the same time frame. This one from 86, Sodom, Obsessed by Cruelty. This one I had never had an original press of. So when I saw on the shelf, I was like, oh, now that's very tempting. I do have a really nice 2 LP reissue of this. But this one's an original, and again, I'm a bit of a sucker for those. Yeah, it is the metal blade pressing. It's not the European press. And this one, of course, famously, the metal blade and European pressing sound different from one another because, the band had recorded it, had to re-record it. One tape was used to produce the version for Europe. The other tape ended up being used to produce the copy on Metal Blade. So yeah, this is the Metal Blade one. This one's Metal Blade 1073. Still silver X label. Um, Still here. Classic pictures of the band on the back. This one, the cover does have some wear. There's a pretty big noticeable crease right here. Really wish that wasn't there because it shows up really bad on the black cover. There's a little other wear along the edges and stuff. None of that, really shows up that badly. Um, but yeah, great album. This one, some people love it, some people hate it. I've always really liked the album. This, even more than in the Sign of Evil, really sold me on the goodness of the bad phase of early Sodom. So once again, it's like I do have the nice reissue, but I've never had an original press of that. And again, I guess technically you could say, well, the Metal Blade press isn't the original press. Shut up, leave me alone. Let me enjoy my Metal Blade press, please. Did have the insert with it too, which again, this is the kind of thing that will kind of, I do consider it a point in favor when I see these. If they've got their inserts, like, yeah, okay, I'm now a little more likely to add that to the buy pile. Whereas if it doesn't have it, it's like, maybe I pass. Uh, is it the end of the world? It doesn't have the insert. No, it's not a total deal breaker, but I do like them to have them if they're supposed to. Part of the reason being is that it's very hard to find loose inserts or things like that. It can happen from time to time, but saying that, okay, I've got this Sodomy LP, now I just have to find somebody who has an extra insert or wait until a copy of just the insert turns up for sale. That kind of thing can take forever to turn up. And I've noticed that on the occasions when they do, oftentimes people want a really unreasonable amount of money for them. It's like, yes, you have the loose insert, and yes, I need that. That doesn't mean I'm going to pay you 50% of the cost of the whole damn record just to get the insert. Let's be a little, practical here. But anyway, nice one to add to the shelf as well. And they did have a few other things of this ilk that were on the shelf that I just, passed on. For example, they had a copy of a DRI Thrash Zone. You know, it's one of the big crossover albums. I have no problem with crossover, but I never really got that into that sound or style. I had a DRI album back in the day. I'm not sure. Actually, maybe I had Thrash Zone, and the one they had at the store was crossover. The one they had at the store was the black cover with the little walking man in silver. So maybe that's the crossover album. And talking to the guy, they'd had one other DRI album. So I think that's also where I got mixed up that they had already sold. So somebody had been in there buying the stuff before I had even got there. Once again, when these kind of things turn up in a store, people will gobble them up pretty fast. It's a lot more tempting and, kind of appealing to have the item in hand, be able to look at it and decide for yourself rather than having to order it from eBay or Discogs, hoping that it shows up in the condition that you think it's in because you haven't actually seen it. But yeah, they'd already sold one of the DRIs. I left the other one. It's the kind of thing I might would give, 1999 money for if I found it in the wild. Um, they had things priced pretty reasonably, I thought, but it's not a record I want to pay 40, 50, $60 for. Just not for me. The last couple of things that had been brought in were from a different person. This second person who had sold part of their collection had brought in some electronic stuff, which I didn't recognize. The guy working, pointed it out to me and just like, okay, cool, not my bag, so I don't really know what it is. But they had also brought in this, and this was actually, in a way, the one I was most excited to find because I didn't have this album in any way, shape, or format. They had the first Atrocity Hallucinations, and oddly enough, it's a white label test press copy, which it's not something I want to pay a lot extra for, but I just think it's awfully cool because this, came out, what is this, 1990? That's an era where you're not finding a lot of vinyl in the first place, much less test press copies of it. So there's Atrocity in their early glory, the Nuclear Blast Records down there at the bottom. The cover for this is really, really clean. Whoever had this took really good care of it and doesn't look like they had it out very much at all. There are a few creases on the open side, but still not bad whatsoever. And yeah, I did not have a copy of Hallucinations. I have a CD copy of the second album, but and both of them, of course, are difficult to find. Both of them cost a good amount when you do find them. For whatever reason, they seem to go without a reissue. There's been some rumors here and there that they might get reissued in the near future, but hey, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. So yeah, when I saw this up on the wall, I was just like, holy crap, that's the one I'm looking for. This is the kind of thing normally I would probably pick up on CD instead of vinyl, but hey, you've got, the record sitting there on the shelf. And yes, yes, absolutely. I'm going to pick that one up. So yeah, as cool as the two metal blades were, kind of, really, really happy to pick that up since I did not own it whatsoever. I've heard it before. I like it. I keep an eye out for it, but even used CD copies, can run a good 40 or $50 or more. Um, Test press of a vinyl copy or $50 for a CD? Yeah, the vinyl test press, I'll definitely take that. And interestingly enough, again, the guy working the counter that day said they had test presses of both the Atrocity albums brought in. The other one had already sold. So would have been really cool to have gotten the pair of them. Would have been a lot more expensive too. So maybe that's a good thing they didn't have that one. I'm really happy, of course, that they had at least the one that I wanted, since I already have a copy of the second LP. So yeah, those are what I found when I went out to buy a couple of new CDs that didn't materialize whatsoever, but got some really cool old vinyl stuff that I've got to play. And yeah, again, Hellhammer checks out, has played really good. The Sodom, I didn't mention it, but yeah, the Sodom vinyl does have some marks on it. They told me very specifically they had taken that one and test played it to see if the marks affected it any, and they said they really did not. So I trust them on that. I've bought records and from them for a solid 4 or 5 years or more now. Probably, yeah, no, 4 years would be early COVID. So yeah, before that even. Um, so yeah, still have to play that and the Atrocity. The Dead Engine and the Atrocity are going to be the ones I'm least familiar with. The Sodom, I just need to play it once to make sure it sounds all right. So if the vinyl does, have some funny marks, they're not scratches. They're more curved. They almost look like, very bad scuffs. But again, you can't really feel any indent or anything on the groove, so I'm not sure what happened there. Funny mark supposedly plays okay. check it out as soon as I get a chance to. But that is going to do it for now. That's going to do it for my record buying for August because it was more money than I intended to spend for a random record store outing. And once again, I've got plenty of stuff to listen to. There are still several good things coming out in August that I'll need to preview and review for heavy metallurgy. So I think my wallet's going to have a nice long rest and probably hit some flea markets around Labor Day. So I've got a month to build up the bank account again. That'll do it for this topic. Now let's talk metal in the comments down below. Have you stumbled into any cool vinyl or old CD, any vintage items that you were really happy to find this summer while out and about just looking around? Sometimes you find these things when you're just least expecting it. And what do you do when that happens? Do you tend to just shy away and leave it where it's at? Are you good? You hold on to your money? Or do you go ahead and just kind of bite the bullet and realize, well, it's a chance to actually pick it up. I better do it, or I might have the regrets later on because it'll never be here when you come back. That we all know because we've all tried, and we've all been left very sad going back for something that was no longer there. So yeah, leave your stories of cool random vintage finds in the comments down below. Until next time, everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.